Hey guys! Okay, so it is Friday night. My goal of getting these videos done by tomorrow is kind of on track. Sort of. If I can get both these character videos done tonight, that would be the ideal, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so we're on to our second last character video for Grace and Frankie, and that is about Frankie Bergstein, who is played by one of my favorite actresses of all time, Lily Tomlin. Lily Tomlin is just, I saw her in 9 to 5 first, and I've been in love with her ever since. Anyways, getting back on topic, there will of course be spoilers here. And this is going to be a long video. Probably the one on Grace will be too, but this one for sure is going to be really long, and I'm sorry about that. I try not to make too long videos, except for the ranking videos. Those are kind of inevitably long, but apart from that, I actually do make an effort to make them shorter if I can help it. But yeah, it's just, I don't think that's going to happen here, so sorry about that. Okay, so Frankie. Okay, yeah, you know how before I was saying all that stuff about not being able to pick between the main four characters? I'm sorry, it's just not true. I think I thought it was true at the time, but then watching the show again and thinking about it more, because again, that was like months ago, I realized that it's not. I mean, I love Frankie. Frankie is probably my favorite character, which means if I'd been doing this, with any other situation, I probably would have done her last because I tended to do my favorites last, like I did with Golden Girls. But I can't because she has so in the first few seasons, her and Grace are pretty even for character development. Grace might get a bit of an edge on her, but not by much. But pretty much after she gets back from Santa Fe, I would say, Frankie kind of starts to lose out in the character development, and that kind of goes on for the rest of season 4. I mean, she's not bad in that season, but it all felt kind of messy, I guess. And then season 5 rolled around, and I have a lot to say about season 5, actually. In season 6 and 7, she had stuff going on, but she just didn't have... The development felt like it was going through Grace, or stuff was happening to Frankie, but it was all about how Grace was reacting to it. But I'm getting way off track. Let's start, as I usually do, with personality. So yeah, Frankie is nice, she is sweet, she's funny, she's really artistic, and she's pretty spiritual. She's adventurous, she likes to try new things, she's pretty much down for anything. She's very much, like, unapologetically her, which is one of the things I love most about her. She loves her family, and she's a very open person. However, I do think that beneath all of that, she does have some insecurity going on. I'll explain that theory some more later. But yeah, she's just a great person. She can definitely be petty. She can be self-centered. She can be very clueless at times, but that's okay. Like, no one is perfect. And I just love Frankie so much. Okay, so on to relationships. I'm going to start with her relationship with Mallory because it was fine. Like, it was fine, nothing wrong with it, but it was not a relationship we saw very much of. It just kind of, like, they weren't, in the scenes we got of them that were significant, which were, like, very few, they seemed like they were, had a good relationship. They clearly, had known each other since Mallory was born, because again, those two families are very interconnected, even though Grace and Frankie hated each other before the start of the show. But anyways, then I'm gonna move on to her relationship with Brianna, which was probably the most significant of the show. Like, outside of anything to do with the main four, I'd say Frankie's relationship with Brianna was the most significant thing we ever had. It was very present, especially during the first few seasons. You could really see, how close they were. I think, this is just theory. Well, it is a theory, but I think it's also a bit backed up by some stuff they said in the show. When when her and Mallory were younger, Grace wasn't the most warm of people. She did try. She really did, but it just wasn't her way. And I think, in a way, Frankie sort of helped, sort of stepped in a bit to fill a bit of that role. And again, that's just a theory, but I think that she kind of did. I think Robert definitely was a big part of that as well. I just think, Grace did try, but yeah, I'm getting into stuff I want to say in the Grace video. Anyways, now onto Frankie's relationship with her sons. I think they had pretty good relationships. Like, I definitely, like, what comes to mind was the scene with Coyote's birth mom, or the episode with his birth mom, where Frankie was just trying so hard to be nice, but everything, like, her whole self was just repelling. She tried so hard, and I didn't necessarily love that whole thing, the way it happened. What I did love, though, was the way at the end Frankie really, just the way she was. And then after Crystal, was the mom's name Crystal? I feel like it was Crystal, but I could just be making that up. Either way, after she left, that moment with Frankie and Coyote when, talking about how Frankie was his mom and that was what he needed, and all sweet moments. Her relationship with Bud was very good too. It never, like, yes, sure, they had moments, and especially this one episode I was thinking of specifically, season 3, episode 6, The Pot, when Frankie crashed Coyote's date night, or was it Bud's date night? Yeah, I think it was Bud's date night. When she crashed that, yeah, that was pretty cringy, and I did not care for it. It was over the top, but other than that, I think, they had a good relationship. Oh, speaking of Frankie and Bud, I do not believe that Frankie was a bad parent when the kids were little. There's that joke about Bud did most of the cleaning. I take that to mean maybe when they were older, like when her and Frankie and Saul were older, Bud came in to help out with the cleaning just because, like, they were older and they just could use the help, and Bud didn't mind doing it. But when the kids were kids, I definitely do not ever get the impression that, Frankie was a flighty, or Saul for that matter, that they were flighty or, like, not there for their kids or making their kids grow up too fast. I just don't buy it. Now, that's obviously, that's my take. That is a biased view. Of course, there's, that's just my opinion on the whole matter. Anyways, on to her relationship with Robert and Saul. Her relationship with Robert, I've said it before, I really like it. I think it has really great, they have a great, like, friend chemistry. That scene where, they apologize to each other, I'm still pretty sure, I meant to double check that scene actually last night, but I forgot, if, like, because I really want to see if Robert also apologizes to Frankie for being with Saul for 20 years, and I'm pretty sure he does, but again, I'm not totally sure. But either way, that, when I think of those two, that's the scene I think of. Frankie and Saul, I don't like it. I've never liked it. I will never like it. I'm sorry. I just don't care for that dynamic at all. I might have, there was some good stuff to it, but between the whole they slept together thing, which still makes more sense from Frankie's perspective than Saul's, and the way they just are with each other, I don't know, like, it's sweet, it is, but something about it just doesn't work for me. I don't know why I had the same problem with Grace and Robert to a lesser degree, but still, I don't know why those pairings just did not work for me. Either way. And now to the most important relationship of this video, Grace and Frankie. I mean, come on, they're the show's title characters. They are. They're the best friends. Like, I care about that relationship so much. I think Grace believed in Frankie in a way that I don't think Saul ever really did. I just think, like, he'd push her to, like, I think Saul, the way Saul talked about Frankie, like, he'd say things like, oh, I'm trying to think of an example. Of course, now I can't. But, like, he'd talk to her like she was just, like, like, oh, that's how Frankie is, and he just kind of, do whatever she wanted. I do have an example. I hate the example because it's not even real, but here we go. In the alternate episode, I hate that episode so much, I'll talk about that more in a minute, but in that episode, Saul and Robert are, I think they're married? They're together. I do think they're married, but Frankie's still living with them because Saul just let it happen. If Frankie, because he felt guilty about everything, and he said, okay. Whereas, Grace would have pushed Frankie to, stand up on her own TV, do for herself, because Frankie definitely could do it. But again, Saul just would never have done that push. And a lot of that's to do with guilt, for sure. But I do think a lot of it is just he never really believed in Frankie. And I don't think Frankie's other relationship, Jacob, which I kind of forgot to mention when I was talking about relationships. Wow, I really didn't give a crap about her romance, did I? I don't, though. I don't think this show does very good at romance overall, with, like, a couple exceptions. Like, well, Saul and Robert is the exception to that. Other than that, though, I really don't think the show is very good at its romantic stuff. I just don't think that's its strong point, personally. The Coyote and Jessica were pretty good, though, too. I'll give them that. But, anyways, what was I saying? The heck was I saying? God, I'm totally blanking right now. I am so sorry about this. Oh, right. Yeah. I don't think Jacob ever really believed in Frankie either. I just think Grace was the only one who just ever really saw her, like, saw beyond her. Like, she almost gave an attitude of incompetence, but when it came to it, she wasn't incompetent. She could definitely be a competent person in her own way. And I just think Grace was the only one who really ever saw that. I don't know. But again, my point is Frankie and Grace. Their friendship is amazing. Like, they both helped each other through so much and stuff, like, just so much. I do have more to say, but it's the Grace video. It's not this video, which sucks. Oh, I will say this. When, like, you could really see how much Frankie cared about Grace, specifically when she got married to Nick, and Frankie was just devastated. I mean, she really did do a good job of hiding it and just going with the flow. She tried. I mean, she made that toast at Bud and Allison's thing, which, yeah, that might not have been the best thing to do, Frankie, but, you know, she was making an effort there, I think. But yeah, you could really see, like, how much she was sad when Grace got married, and when Grace moved back in with her, she was so happy. And even before that, like, when Grace needed to call her for help, like, Frankie was just, like, way too happy about that, which is terrible, but it is what it is. It's fine. Yeah, I have more about their relationship, but it's from Grace's perspective more, because, again, a lot of things seem to go more about Grace and through Grace. Like, again, the whole thing when Frankie was, you know, thought she was going to die, felt like it was more about Grace's reaction than it was about Frankie's, for the most part. But we'll get there in a minute. Okay, so yeah, we'll take a second to talk about her romantic relationships just for a quick second. I don't care, but I'm going to talk about them because I should. Jacob. Did not care for him. I found him condescending towards Frankie a lot of the time. I can't wrap my head around why she would ever move to Santa Fe with him instead of staying with Grace. Maybe I'm biased, but man, he annoyed me. However, I will say, with that whole Santa Fe storyline, like, you could really see how torn Frankie was, and it was a very, very well played, very well everything, that whole section, in my opinion. And her wanting to go home was well done, too. Yeah, I was glad when the relationship with Jacob ended, though. I thought it was definitely time. I did not need to come back in season 6. I did not need that cheating storyline, which felt weird and out of character for Frankie. Like, yes, you can play it like she was, you know, just trying to, like, have fun and wasn't hurt anyone. And no, she wasn't trying to hurt anyone, but I mean, she was cheated on for 20 years. I just couldn't see her doing that. It felt really out of character. Anyways, I did like her relationship with Jack somewhat better than Jacob overall. By the way, Jack and Jake, were they trying to confuse me? Anyways, I found Jack to be overall, like, just a nicer, more, not necessarily nicer, but I felt like he just got Frankie better, which was nice. It didn't last long, the relationship, but apart from, like, the bunny thing, which I did not care for at all, I thought really, really much improved over Jacob. Okay, so before I get into plots specifically, like, this is a plot, but it's going to take up a huge section of this video because I'm going to rant. I've been holding this in for too long. Okay. And it's all about season 5. I'm sorry, this video's, again, super rambly. I'm sorry. I just have so much to say about Frankie, and it's all pouring out in a disorganized mess. So sorry about that. Okay, so season 5. The first time I watched it, I was like, what? What kind of weird season is this? Frankie's so out of character. But then I watched it again. And I thought, you know what? This actually could have been a really nice build-up. A really nice build-up. But then they did not stick the landing. So let me explain the way I see this. Because when I was reading online, a lot of people seem to think season 5 was like the low point for Frankie specifically. So, okay. The beginning of season 5, it basically starts off with a string of successes for Frankie. So first of all, they get the house back. And then the aid thing happens, and they get Joan Margaret, which, wasn't that Frankie's idea? It was either Frankie or... I think it was Frankie. Anyways, that happens. And then she does the crosswalk thing, which Grace helped with that, yeah. But it was still super interesting, because she was the one, it was her idea, it was her thing, her pushing everything, and her... Didn't she even call Grace, say she needed help? So yeah, she orchestrated it, she got that time extended. Go Frankie. And you could really tell she felt good about it. And then we had the stuff with, the pharmacy, and then her trying to, find herself, which, that was whatever. I don't have a strong thoughts on that part. It was what it was. It was fine. And then we had the website crash, which Frankie fixed. In her and Grace's business, a lot of the time, it was Grace fixing things, not Frankie. And I think Frankie being the one to fix a mistake that Grace made her feel amazing. And, just on top of the world. She seemed so happy about it. But then the next episode happens, and she screws up bad. And when she said that whole thing out about, free vibrators and stuff, that was a big, big screw up. She's also partially responsible for Saul's dog running away, which was not good either, but they did find him, so thank God for that. Anyways, my point being, not a good episode for Frankie, and a big crash for her. So then you see in the next episode, you really see she's stressing and feeling so bad about everything, and she's struggling to fix it and make it right. And Grace is saying, look, before you fixed my mistake, now let me fix yours. And Frankie's eventually she agrees, but then she doesn't like the video. So, and it just doesn't feel right with her, morally. She's clearly uncomfortable with it. So, she does something not great and goes and deletes the video and posts another video that she made. Which, yeah, without telling Grace, which, yeah, I can see why Grace was upset about that. Anyways, then Grace goes and she comes back, and this is now episode 12, and she's clearly expecting everything to be all screwed up and for her to have to fix everything. And she comes in, and it's not. Frankie has got everything under control. Things are ready for the wedding. The vibrator thing came together. And I think, and she didn't really show this too much, but I got the impression just from subtext that she, she wanted Grace to be proud of her, wanted to show Grace again that she could do it. But Grace kind of spent the whole episode not. She seemed really, she almost seemed like she was rolling her eyes at Frankie and what she was doing. Sorry about the bird clock. I think it's the exact same thing happened last night, but I don't know if that was in the video I actually posted. Or in, one of the many, many, many takes it took me to get there. Anyways. But yeah. The hell was I saying? Okay, there we go. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm trying here. So yeah, Grace just seemed like she just was annoyed and I don't know, very definitely not impressed. And you could, in that whole episode, they were being pretty passive aggressive towards each other, I think. There was the whole Frankie made Grace sit at the kids' table. Grace bought that extra cake, which I don't think she meant as a jab necessarily, but Frankie definitely took that right to heart. And then they had their big fight. And honestly, that fight felt like it had been earned in a way. You could have seen it coming. The tension was built up. I think that episode was actually one of the best episodes in the series. I hated it the first time I watched it. It was painful, but that was the point. Emotions were running high. People were upset. You could definitely see both Grace and Frankie's sides. But I couldn't really see Frankie's side the first time I watched it. Later I could, but not the first time, because the ending never had, like, you know, in a fight, like, when people apologize, you know, they sort of talk it out, they try to, like, you know, just figure things out and just sort of, like, really fix their issues and really, like, so that, you know, they're not just putting a band-aid on it, they're really trying to fix it. Well, that's not what happened here. We had an alternate episode, which I don't even get, like, did Babe send them a dream? Like, that's the only thing I could think of that would have made any sense, but it never really says, I don't think. Either way, this alternate episode happens, and then at the very end of the episode, we have Frankie and Grace run towards each other and basically say, you know, apologize, and then everyone's happy for 5 seconds until Grace says she got married, and that's the episode ends pretty much. Which, yeah. What I would have done, though, what I think would have been a much better episode, is take out the weird gimmicky episode that I hated, and I know I'm biased, I'm sorry. If you loved that episode, I'm so sorry. I just really hated it. And what I would have done is still have Grace get impulse married to Nick, but then have, like, at the wedding afterwards, Nick's like, Grace, what's wrong? And Grace is like, my family isn't here, and Frankie's not here, because I think out of everyone, I honestly think that Frankie was, well, we see it in season 7, like, Frankie's the closest person Grace has had to her since her father, basically, or at least the person, like, that she trusts the most, but that's definitely a Grace video. Anyways. And then, like, sort of just have her explain her side to Nick, and, like, them talk it over, and then her decide to talk to Frankie. Whereas Frankie's doing the same thing. He's splitting her side to someone, anyone but Saul, literally anyone but Saul. Maybe, I think Bud is probably the best option we have. I'd kind of rather it not be one of her kids, but there's not really a better option, because, again, anything's better than Saul. Again, and then have them both decide to apologize and then have it go well. I know it's a bit cliche, and it's probably not a great thought, but I feel like anything would be better than the goddamn alternative episode. I just really hated that episode. Again, I would love people's thoughts on this, because, like, people seem to like the episode. I just didn't. I hated it. I thought it ruined the closure, and it made the whole season feel like a mess versus a really good arc. Anyways, other important Frankie plots that I haven't talked about yet. The big one is her and Babe in season 2, when she basically helped her do the assisted suicide. Now, you know, I'm glad they covered this topic, because, I mean, again, like, MAID is definitely a thing that, you know, people are doing, and it's important to talk about it, but this wasn't MAID, really. I mean, it wasn't doctor assisted, it was Frankie assisted, basically. And I think that some ways they did this the best they could have under the situation, but I think in other ways it could have been done better. Like, specifically, so Frankie was all in on it. Well, eventually she was. Grace was not, though. And I think Frankie was too pushy about it. Honestly, she did not come off very well when she was talking to Grace about it. Like, and then the show kind of didn't really acknowledge that was a bad thing, or that she said anything wrong. Like, I didn't think they did that very good, but I think, again, the idea of it was very good, like, the intention behind it. Definitely, I think, you know, I definitely think that they were trying to address a serious issue, you know, because that wasn't, I think the reason they did it like that was because it wasn't legal at the time to do it like that. I think that's kind of what they were trying to address there. I don't know, I'm just guessing here. But either way, again, it's definitely something that people do, and it's definitely, the show is showing it in a positive way, which is good. I think it's good that they did it like that. Again, it wasn't, the only hesitancy I have about saying that is just because they showed it as, like, it wasn't done by a doctor, but again, I keep thinking this because it wasn't legal in the state that they were in at that time. I don't know. I'm only guessing, but again, I think the way, you know, I think it was good. Overall, I think it was good. But again, if anyone else has different thoughts about this, please let me know, because I'm definitely 100% not an expert on the situation or anything like that. Just my thoughts. I always feel a little scared saying these, like, when it really gets into something like, you know, more where I feel like I need more knowledge to talk about it. But again, I do think, except for the part where it wasn't, you know, done by a doctor, very good to put that in there. Very, very strong thing, because, I mean, again, showing that in a positive light is important. Very important. Okay. Other Frankie plots, there was the death thing in season 7. Again, I just wish that had been more about Frankie. It didn't feel like it was about Frankie. It felt like it was about Grace more than anything. And it was good stuff. It was great material. But, yeah, I just felt like we kind of got Frankie's perspective on it, but, like, we kind of didn't. It was kind of weird. I don't know. It just wasn't what I wanted, personally, out of it. We have the business stuff, obviously, which I still feel like was a bit more of a Grace thing than a Frankie thing. Like, she definitely tried, and definitely in season 5 specifically, but, like, for the most part, Grace was definitely the one leading that effort, it felt like. Oh, I did like how in season 7, when Grace was doing that meeting and Frankie was not, we did see how, like, how integral Frankie was to the business. I definitely liked that. That was good. And then there was obviously, like, there was the lube stuff in season 2. That was a good plot overall. That was probably one of... Season 2 was probably the one where they had the most solo plots, which was great for individual character development. But personally, I think it's best when Grace and Frankie are together. I think that's what's most interesting to watch, personally. But, it was still good. I definitely enjoyed that stuff better than what was going on with Grace in season 2, for sure. But, yeah. Yeah, other than that, there was obviously more to it than that, but, like, that's, like, the main stuff I think that needs to be covered with Frankie, in my opinion. So, I'll just end off with some favorite Frankie moments. Anything with Frankie, and, like, almost, like, any of the kids but Mallory, always good. Always good. Love seeing her relationship with Brianna specifically. I love seeing how important it was to both of them. Like, it really was very important. You could see how upset, like, when they had that falling out after the lube thing, you could see how much that upset both of them. And I loved seeing just how, when they healed their friendship. I'm just glad that happened, and seeing how they were happy about it. And then Brianna went on to fund the business, and that was really good. Like, so much stuff with Grace. Like, I can't even necessarily think of anything off the top of my head specifically, but I loved it so much of her stuff with Grace, because, like, she was just such a good friend to her, and they were good friends to each other, honestly. Just so good. Yeah, just honestly, like, Frankie is definitely my favorite character. Again, I know I said that wasn't a thing, but, like, it is. I'm sorry. I just love Frankie. She could definitely be over the top at times, but so good. Probably my favorite moment, like, when I think of Frankie, the moment I think of, for some reason, I don't know why, is the moment right before, like, they die, basically. When Frankie is going to, like, when I don't remember what's happening. I can't even think. I think it was like a speech or something. Either way. And when Frankie was talking about her hands and how she couldn't paint anymore. And that, I don't know why I think of that scene when I think of Frankie, because I know it's a Grace and Frankie scene. And I'm sorry, because I know in that episode Frankie was talking about how it was too bad that her and Grace, like, people couldn't think of a story that didn't involve Grace, which is, by the way, pretty dumb. Come on, people. Like, it almost felt like the show was kind of realizing that it hadn't given Frankie a lot of solo stuff recently, and kind of making a joke about it, like, hey, see, we know. But still, come on. Like, there was stuff. There was. But I do think overall the writers had a stronger grasp on Grace's character than they did Frankie's. Still, though, Frankie was amazing. Loved her so much. I feel like I've probably ranted on for longer than I intended to, but it's fine. I hope I mentioned there was going to be spoilers in this video. I think I did. But if I didn't, I'm so sorry. Anyways, alright, I will see you soon, probably, like, in a few hours, with the Grace video. And thank you guys so much for watching.